fifth graders, I'm back with some more Tuck Everlasting. So today I am going to be reading chapter 4 to you. And you are going to meet another very important character in this book. Chapter 4. At sunset of that same long day, a stranger came strolling up the road from the village and paused at the Foster's gate. Winnie was once again out in the yard, this time intent on catching fireflies. And at first, she didn't notice him, but after a few moments of watching her, he called out, "Good evening." He was remarkably tall and narrow, the stranger standing there. His long chin faded off into a thin, apologetic beard, but his suit was a jaunty yellow that seemed to glow a little in the fading light. A black hat dangled from one hand, and as Winnie came toward him, he passed his other hand through his dry gray hair, settling it smoothly. "Well now," he said in a light voice, "out for fireflies, are you?" "Yes," said Winnie. "A lovely thing to do on a summer evening," said the man richly. "A lovely entertainment. I used to do it myself when I was your age, but, of course, that was a long, long time ago." He laughed, gesturing in self-deprecation with long, thin fingers. His tall body moved continuously. A foot tapped, a shoulder twitched. And his body moved in angles, rather jerkily. But at the same time, he had a kind of grace, like a well-handled marionette. Indeed, he seemed almost to hang suspended there in the twilight. But Winnie, though she was half charmed, was suddenly reminded of the stiff black ribbons they had hung on the door of the cottage for her grandfather's funeral. She frowned and looked at the man more closely. But his smile seemed perfectly all right, quite agreeable and friendly. "Is this your house?" asked the man, folding his arms now and leaning against the gate. "Yes," said Winnie. "Do you want to see my father?" "Perhaps, in a bit," said the man. "But I'd like to talk to you first." "Have you and your family lived here long?" "Oh, yes," said Winnie. "We've lived here forever." "Forever?" The man echoed thoughtfully. It wasn't a question, but Winnie decided to explain anyway. "Well, not forever, of course, but as long as there have been any people here. My grandmother was born here. She says that this was all trees once, just one great big forest everywhere around. But now it's mostly all cut down, except for the woods." "I see," said the man, pulling at his beard. "So, of course, you know everyone and everything that goes on." "Well, not especially," said Winnie. "At least I don't." "Why?" The man lifted his eyebrows. "Oh," he said, "I am looking for someone, a family." "I don't know anybody much," said Winnie with a shrug. "But my father might. You could ask him." "I believe I shall," said the man. "I do believe I shall." At this moment, the cottage door opened, and in the lamp glow that spilled across the grass, Winnie's grandmother appeared. "Winifred, who are you talking to out there?" "It's a man, Granny," she called back. "He says he's looking for someone." "What's that?" said the old woman. She picked up her skirts and came down the path to the gate. "What did he say he wants?" The man on the other side of the fence bowed slightly. "Good evening, madam," he said. "How delightful to see you looking so fit." "And why shouldn't I be fit?" she retorted, peering at him through the fading light. His yellow suit seemed to surprise her, and she squinted suspiciously. "We haven't met that I can recall. Who are you? Who are you looking for?" The man answered neither of these questions. Instead, he said, This young lady tells me you've lived here for a long time, so I thought you would probably know everyone who comes and goes. The old woman shook her head. I don't know everyone, she said, nor do I want to. And I don't stand outside in the dark discussing such a thing with strangers. Neither does Winifred. So. And then she paused, for through the twilight sounds of crickets and sighing trees, a faint, surprising wisp of music came floating to them, and all three turned toward the woods. It was a tinkling little melody, and in a few moments it stopped. My stars, said Winnie's grandfather. My stars, said Winnie's grandmother, her eyes round. I do believe it's come again after all these years. She pressed her wrinkled hands together, forgetting the man in the yellow suit. Did you hear that, Winifred? That's it. That's the elf music I told you about. Why, it's been ages since I heard it last. And this is the first time you've ever heard it, isn't it? Wait till we tell your father. And she seized Winnie's hand and turned to go back into the cottage. Wait, said the man at the gate. He had stiffened and his voice was eager. You've heard that music before, you say? But before he could get an answer, the music began again, and they all stopped to listen. This time, it tinkled its way faintly through the little melody 3 times before it faded. It sounds like a music box, said Winnie when it was over. Nonsense, it's elves, crowed her grandmother excitedly. And then she said to the man at the gate, You'll have to excuse us now. And she shook the gate latch under his nose just to make sure it was locked. And then, taking Winnie by the hand once more, she marched up the path and into the cottage, shutting the door firmly behind her. But the man in the yellow suit stood, tapping his foot in the road for a long time, all alone, looking at the woods. The last stains of sunset had melted away, and the twilight died too, as he stood there, though its remnants clung reluctantly to everything that was pale in color. Pebbles, the dusty road, the figure of the man himself, turning them blue and then blurry. Then the moon rose up, and the man came to himself and sighed. His expression was one of intense satisfaction. He put on his hat, and in the moonlight, his long fingers looked graceful and very white. And then he turned and disappeared down the shadowy road, and as he went, he whistled very softly that tinkling little melody from the woods. So that is chapter 4. And in this chapter, you met 2 characters, actually. The most important character is the man in the yellow suit. He will become increasingly more important, and you will get to know him much better as the chapters roll along. You also got to meet Winnie's grandmother. She is a typical grandmother, of course, and you're also getting to know Winnie's family. That they're very proper people. They might seem like they're higher class, and they have a lot of money, and they're very sophisticated. I do have a question for you that I would like you to think about, and that is, so they heard a melody coming from the woods, and Winnie's grandmother said it's elf music, and that she had heard it before, and she hadn't heard it for a really long time. So, why do you think that Winnie's grandmother describes it as elf music, and do you think it's elf music? What do you make of this music or melody that seems to be coming from the woods? So you're kind of making an inference, a prediction, it's more like a prediction right now. And that is the end of chapter 4. Thank you.